So hello all, my name is Matthew. I'm the VP of Customers here at Hospitable. I want to thank you all so very much for joining us here tonight at our first ever Hospitable Hosts Workshop. We have 4 amazing owners, managers, hosts here with us who are going to share their experiences with you. In our space, we know that hosts love to help other hosts. So you can jump into any hosting group, you can jump into any hosting forum, and you're going to see hosts sharing their triumphs, their success. And of course, they're going to share their challenges and even some of the failures that they've had along the way. And that's the idea behind these workshops. We want to help facilitate that sharing between hosts. So today we've invited 4 hosts to tell us their stories. They lived through some of the same challenges that I'm sure you're all living through today or will be living through in the near future. And they're going to help us understand what they've done to find some success, what they've done to overcome some of those challenges. So the idea tonight, we're going to be discussing the all-powerful superhost status, right? We want to let you know, how do you get it? How do you maintain it? What do you do with it once you have it? And obviously also being able to take some questions from the audience at the very end. So before we start introducing ourselves here, we have Angela. Angela's going to give us all a quick run of show just so we have an idea what to expect. Angela, if you would, please.
Thank you, Matthew. I hope everyone can hear me and that everyone can see the screen. Thank you all for making the time to be here with us for yet another Hospitable First, which is the Hospitable Hosts Workshop. Just a few bits and bobs before I begin from me, and then I'll pass back to Matthew to kick off. So just a reminder that this session is recording. It will be made available in its entirety at the end of the session on our YouTube channel. We have the Q&A section of the night where we invite you to put your questions in the Q&A box. So if you look at the bottom of your sort of screen panel, however you're joining in, there should be a Q&A box, question and answer. So please leave your questions there. We have the upvoting option where you can really let us know which of the questions are your favorites and you'd like us to get to first, so we can do that in the best time possible. Also, kind reminder, if you haven't yet, or if you'd like to post something about the event tonight, don't forget to tag us. All our social media handles are available on screen. So we're on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So yeah, looking forward to this. And back to you, Matthew, take us away.
And I'm muted like the first time I've ever been on Zoom before. I appreciate that. Thank you so much there, Angela. So we'll let you, the real stars of the show tonight are our fantastic panelists. So I'm going to go ahead and let them give you an introduction. Cami, why don't we start with you? Tell us a bit more about yourself. Tell that audience what we do here.
Well, I'm Cami Myles, and I'm coming from Dallas, Texas. And we've been doing Airbnb for 5 years. And we started out with 1 listing, then we went quickly to 3 listings. And at 3, I realized I was pretty much tied to my phone and needed a different solution. We've had as many as 18 at one time all over the US. So we manage other people's listings. We also have our own. So we've kind of downsized just a little bit, but I feel like with this software, we could definitely probably have about 30 at one time and be okay. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thank you so very much for that, Cami. I'm going to pass it along next to Linda. Linda, introduce yourself to the audience, if you would, please.
Hello, I'm Linda Hayes, and I'm actually from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, but I also live in Belize, which is where I have my 2 new short-term rentals and another property I just purchased to do the same. And I have been doing short-term rentals for about 6 years and started with 1 as Cami did, and now I have about 6. In both Edmonton and Belize.
Ooh, some opposite ends right there for sure. I know you're heading out there and not enjoying that snow up there.
No, yeah, it's a little cold right now.
A little chilly. All right, Cullin, if you would please tell us a bit more about yourself.
Sure, Matthew, thank you. Yeah, my name's Cullin Tate. I live right outside Washington, D.C., United States, and I have 9 vacation rentals, 8 of which are getaway cabin type destinations. And then I have 1 also in the Caribbean in the Turks and Caicos.
I love that. That's absolutely fantastic. I need to get a nice little hideaway spot that I can go and rent out and then move on. And last but certainly not in the least, Dave, why don't you give us an introduction if you would, please?
Absolutely. My name is Dave Hillar. I'm in fantastic Toronto, Canada, and I'm currently managing a dozen listings for owners, both in and around the Toronto area and up into what we would call cottage country. So these are lake homes and more of recreational properties north of the city. The amazing thing is we've got about a dozen more that are in various states of onboarding. So this is a business that's growing really rapidly for us just over the last couple of years, and excited to see how we go through expansion. I think I aspire to be like some of the other hosts on this call, which is possessing my own properties at some stage as well, but certainly having a great time working with owners on their properties across Southern Ontario.
That's awesome. So thank you all so very much for sharing. Again, we're super thrilled to have you here and listen to some of your stories. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, before we get started, let me talk and define some of the criteria that Airbnb uses for their Superhost status. So this is something that they check, I believe it's 4 times a year, and they take a look at your past 12-month history and aggregate that to determine, are you eligible? Have you achieved this status? So the first is that you've completed at least 10 trips or 3 reservations for a total of at least 100 nights over the past 12 months, that you've maintained a 90% response rate or higher, that you have a 1% cancellation rate. So 1 cancellation per 100 of your reservations or lower, with, of course, some exceptions that come into the extenuating circumstances policy that they have. And then lastly, that you maintain an overall 4.8 rating, and that's based on the date that the guest left the review, not necessarily the date that they checked out over those past 365 days. So with that said, the first question that I have for you, how did you earn Superhost status? How are you helping your clients to earn Superhost status? How are you helping those property owners that you work with to earn and achieve their Superhost status? So Linda, I know you had a quick one about that. How did you get started with your Superhost status? What did it take to get you up and running?
Yeah, well, first of all, the one thing was great communication. So communication was key, as people were like, if someone sent a message, I had to send it right away. And with one property, it was easy to do that, changed to later on when I had more. Another factor about that is cleaners. So with cleaners, you had to have them scheduled to actually make sure they come and that they do a good job. And that was a very manual process for me initially, but I had the time to do it. Later on, I had to do stuff with that. And that's where Hospitable helped me. But in the beginning, it was making sure that the cleaners were set up, making sure everything was good for the guests. And I had brand new properties. So that made it very nice for the properties to get good reviews as long as communication was good. And I also did offer discounts as well to get people in to get those reviews.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And when it came time to soliciting reviews, did you do anything in particular, or like you said, those discounts and the properties kind of spoke to themselves? Like, were you actively sourcing reviews to get started?
In the beginning, I actually didn't. So it was a brand new property. It was Christmas time, Edmonton. We're close to West Edmonton Mall. So I actually think I was fairly lucky to get it initially just by doing the pricing and a brand new property. And they're pretty innovative houses too, with their garden suites, which are garage suites, which were brand new type of housing. So I think I was lucky in the beginning.
Awesome. Awesome. And how about you, Cullin? When you got started, right, what were some of those things that you focused on to make sure that you earned that Superhost status? Actually, before we even get there, was that something that you achieved, that you were striving for? Were you, all gung-ho about Superhost, or was it something like, hey, if I get it, I get it, that type of thing?
Yeah, I think Airbnb does a really good job sort of gamifying that for us as hosts, that's that big badge we want to go after. But Hospitable was a big part of that for me. Not only just being quick on the response times, but starting the 5-star review process at the very first communication point. And specifically what we do there is we think about that first message that goes to the guest as a concierge type of email. What are the things that I can tell this guest how they can plan their trip? Maybe it's not even about my property, but what are the things to do when you're in XYZ town or city? What are the best attractions? And so we really front load that first message as a concierge would to give our guests places to stop along the way, things to do while they're there, and really get them excited and planning their trip, almost planning their trip for them.
And that I think is, really a lot of folks when they start thinking about communication, it's like, okay, let me just get them the basics. Let me get them what we need, right? How do you get in, where you're going to park? But I kind of, I'm a bit biased, as you can see, but I love the fact that you can automate and really take that off your hands to provide a bit more value and give them more information that's really going to help the entire guest experience, right? That's really what it's about, making this wonderful for your guests so that they're going to remember you, they're going to want to come back, and they're going to make sure to leave those positive reviews and sing your praises with it
That
all.
5-star review can really begin even
How about that?
before the property.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, getting that first one, right? That's always something we focus when we're talking about those new hosts, really make sure that you're doing everything you can with that first, because once you get that first 5-star and then it's sitting there on your profile, it just adds a different level of credibility as you're waiting for, as opposed to when you're waiting for it. And how about you, Cammie? Was Superhost status something that you were really focused on, or did it kind of just happen? And how did it happen?
No, it didn't just happen. We were very, very purposeful as far as getting the 5-star reviews. We actually do a little bit of a psychological marketing game, and we actually say 5-star review in our messaging 3 times. So the very first time that they book, it's like, this is our goal, this is what we're after. And then the morning after, we're like, we really hope that you're having a 5-star experience. And then at the end, when we ask them for their review, we say, if you didn't have a 5-star experience, please contact us immediately. So we educate the guest along the way as to what our goals are. And if most of them will contact us ahead of time if they didn't have a 5-star experience. And then we try to give them some kind of little bonus so that they're easy on us on the review.
That's awesome. And is that something you started from the very beginning, or is that something you picked up along the way? Like how did that come about, making sure that you're so, purposeful in that messaging?
I took a little trick from the marketing world. So
Nice.
we started off like that. And we've been holding our Superhost status now for, I think, 5.5 years.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So far.
Congratulations. Yeah. And Dave, I know you're a bit different, right? You're working with your property owners. You're helping them to, achieve these statuses. Is that something that, is there any sort of like discussion about that? Is there, hey, this is our goal for you, is to achieve this? Like, tell me a bit more about that and how you get started.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a professional services company, that's really the aspiration for the owner, and what can we do that is bringing more to the table than they can themselves. And so it becomes embedded in the conversation up front with our potential host owners is that we want to strive to do that for them, and we're going to do that through expertise of experience, through the preparation of their property, and then through following through with all the service providers and touch points that a guest might have along the way. So it's absolutely something that comes into the sales pitch as we, sell owners on our services. Thankfully, you don't actually need to sell that hard. There's a lot of people in the market that want to do this and are ripe for your service, but it is embedded in that promise. And so as we're able to deliver on it for the hosts, it's being true to what we've said to them, but it also brings a huge smile to their face because they know that they can start to accelerate their listing still further on pricing and everything else. So yeah, it's embedded in that service promise with us.
Now, let me ask you, Dave, specifically, because I know hosts go about it a lot of different ways. Property managers go about it a lot of different ways. For your owners, right? Are they bringing an Airbnb profile to you? Are you creating one? Are you doing a little bit of both? Or are you kind of maintaining everything under, your profile there as the property management?
Yeah, so 95% of the time, it's us creating everything for the owner. We've got folks who are wholly new to the space. They have no idea how to get started. And so we're showing them the ropes right through the process, or taking it completely off their hands and having them say, I trust you, go forward with it. There are a few folks who come to the table with their own profile, but usually the reason they're reaching out is they haven't had a lot of success to that point. So in those cases, we're potentially starting over as well, because they're bringing with them a lot of baggage that you might have to reframe around. So in our business, it's typically right from the get-go, giving them an understanding of how the platform works, understanding things like Superhost and what's included in that, and how we as service professionals help to get them through that process as well, and make the burden a lot easier.
I love that. And educating them, hey, this is the things that we're going to go for. So here's another KPI that you can hold me to and why it holds so valuable. Yeah. Absolutely. And Cammie, I know you said you manage some properties for others as well. What does that look like for you? Are you managing their profiles? Is everything under yours? And how does that affect Superhost status?
Well, I'm a little bit more of a control freak. I like to have the accounts under my account because I want all the interaction going through me. I don't want my owners jumping in and actually, you know, or a lot of the owners do want to have that. They want to have their own accounts, and I'm curious to talk to Dave to see how it works with his accounts. But I personally like to have a little bit more control. And
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a barrier for some of the new owners because they're not sure they want to trust that. But once we get going, they're perfectly comfortable.
That's interesting. That's amazing. Yeah. And, one thing that I'm going to hope to speak throughout this is I've seen this so much, and this is something that I share all the time. In our space, we're really snowflakes here. Everybody does things in their own way, right? You see that there's some uniformity in some things that people are doing, but you can have property managers who are really close together in the same city with the same type of properties, but their goals are completely different, and they're able to go ahead and achieve success or focus on some of those different things. So really, one thing that I always speak to our hosts about, make sure you understand what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish. You're going to have a ton of great information that's out there. We do need to pick and choose like which of that information we're utilizing, because, hey, have that focus, have that idea of what we want to build, what type of brand do we want to build, what are some of those things that we want to accomplish, and then seek out information that's going to help you, achieve success in those specific areas. Everybody's like, do I have to do this? Do I have to do that? Well, we need to talk a bit more about what some of your goals are before I tell you, what I think we should be doing, or, what I think we shouldn't be doing here. Now, maintaining Superhost status. You got it. You did a great job getting it. Congratulations. How do we keep it? What are some of those things that you're focused on? What are some of those things that you're paying attention to each and every day? I know, Linda, we mentioned something about your properties down in Belize that you do to kind of help make sure that you're delivering that good quality guest experience each and every time.
Perfect. Yeah. So in Edmonton, it's really easy. The cleaners are fairly simple to maintain, especially with Hospitable having the tasks set up. But in Belize, because cleaners are a lot harder, they don't actually typically have emails. All that kind of stuff is a problem. So I actually have a 1-day gap in between stays so that I can manually message the cleaner, make sure they're going to go. And in Belize, they still might not go. So at least I have 1 day where, hey, if that doesn't happen, I can message someone else. So that's one of the things I really need to do. The other thing is having good lock software that works for people and have that set up to each other. So I use lock software in Edmonton that's Wi-Fi enabled. It's really good. Airbnb links with the software, so that's perfect. But in Belize, my door locks are different. I can't put a keypad in. So I have a different type of lock box that actually has a key in it, but it still sets up a separate code for the guests, which can all be sent easily through Hospitable so that I don't have that issue. And that's one of the advantages of Airbnb, where the other software or the other platforms that I use, they don't have that. So that's where I have to manually still set up codes and send it to the guest.
That's amazing. Yeah. So making sure that that team is in line as well, because again, we're delivering a good guest experience overall. It's about those different elements. And I know, Dave, you spoke to something earlier when we were chatting, about that, about having the, I guess your short-term rental supply chain, if you will, or your supply team. What are some of the things that you guys focus on there to maintain that status and to ensure that your teams are living up to those expectations?
Yeah, and I'll give a shout out. I think one of our cleaners is actually on this call. She messaged that she would join. So we really only are as good as a team, right? And if you have fantastic suppliers who are committed to what they're doing, who are able to look at the calendar, understand when they need to go in, that have a good lay of the land, and have gone in initially, understand where everything is, the next visits are going to be that much easier, right? So having a tremendous supply chain that helps you resolve issues as they come up, or can help take care of the things that are routine maintenance, is going to ensure that you have smooth transitions. You're not wasting time. You're not delaying people from check-in, check-out, those sorts of things. So you're continuing to live up to the service promise that a guest may have coming into that place. There's also work that you can do, right? You have tools at your disposal for vetting customers. So in the initial stages, you might be willing to take anyone in, but if you've worked hard to build a reputation and you're starting to increase pricing, you may have a more discerning clientele, may have higher expectations as your pricing increases as well. So it's incumbent on you to vet the folks who are coming in just as much as they're vetting the places that they're choosing. They have a whole marketplace to choose from. You should be choosy about who you're bringing in as well. So we look at things like government ID on file, not having a brand new profile that was created this month with 0 reviews, looking at some longevity, some rationale for why somebody might not have a 5-star track record as well. So we ask those questions, we get to know who that guest is going to be, and we vet them using the tools at our disposal as well. So two big things I'd say are the team around you and what you can do proactively as a host to vet and ensure that you're getting good likelihood guests coming into your property as well.
Yeah, that's great. And that's something too that I think folks, especially when they're talking to me on this side and like focused on automation and trying to put it on autopilot as much as possible. But you want to try to automate as much as you can, but that doesn't mean you want to try to automate everything, right? Because you want to have those conversations. You want to ask those questions. What's bringing you to town when you see somebody, or hey, that local guest, hey, tell me a bit more why you selected our property or what brings you to the area, and at the same time, there's no hard, steadfast rules, right? I know some folks say, I will never take somebody who's who's a local guest, that's staying for a couple of nights, or, they may be causing a problem. But hey, what about that local guest whose house is getting fumigated right now and just needs a place to stay that's down the street? It's a family of 4. They're going to take care of your property. So not having that, being able to engage, and that's kind of the beauty of Airbnb, right? It's hey, we're real individuals, we can have those discussions. So automation can get you there, like asking those questions automatically, once you get that reservation or once you get that inquiry, but then taking it the next mile, making sure that you're getting the right guests in there. I think goes a long way. And I love that about, you and Linda right there, especially early on. People are like, I got to get every night, right? I want 100% occupancy. Give me 13 more channels so I can get that extra 2%, Matthew. But at the end of the day, you're also protecting your business. So sometimes, while some people may have that as the focus, you do need to make sure that, hey, we're taking care of our properties and doing what's best for us, even if that means blocking out an additional night so that your cleaners are going to do a great job, or asking some additional questions and maybe not accepting that reservation because you just don't feel right about it. How about you, Cullin? Anything in your process that you do to really kind of maintain that status, maintain a good guest experience, and make sure that, you're delivering a great experience overall?
Yeah, I don't manage for other people, but I do coach a number of other hosts, and particularly early hosts. One of the key successes is really being business minded about this. So specifically maintaining superhost status. Sometimes we can feel when the guest, maybe it's even our fault, something's gone a little wrong in the check-in process, or maybe something wasn't perfectly clean, or some amenity wasn't in perfect working order. And you can feel that guest is beginning to get agitated. I've learned to get ahead of it a little bit and maybe just return that cleaning fee, right? Make the refund of $50 or throw a little money. If you know that, particularly if it's something that you own, that you could have done a little bit better, getting ahead of that with a little bit of a refund really tends to diffuse the situation and keep that bad review from happening, really turning.
Hey, Cullin, can I add a little bit to that? So I don't like taking money out of my bank account. So what we do instead of that is we try really hard to butter up our guests and save that reservation. I have Instacart. So I'll basically send over a bottle of wine or send over some donuts or some kind of something special rather than just, hey, here's money that they might forget about. And we've had, when we send special, we have nothing but cakes in our town, and we send those over. And I'm telling you what, they even mentioned in the review, they're like, well, the reservation was a little bumpy, but man, did they make up for it with those cupcakes. So same mentality, I'm a little stingy with the bottom line.
Would rather give them a cupcake than the George Washington. And do you think have your amenities changed in any way, shape, or form with the focus of Superhost? Or let me ask you, are you doing anything with that concept in mind? Or is this, I'm just looking to deliver a great guest experience and Superhost is kind of like a byproduct of that? Anybody?
Like for us and our owners, I think it's a combination. You don't want the owner's property to fall off, to be completely not matching up against the description that you've promised them. So gives you an example of a couple of properties where the bathroom caulk is starting to look pretty tired, not necessarily moldy or dirty, but looking really tired. And those are the types of things where if I notice them walking into a property, guests are probably going to start to notice that as well. So it's doing smaller things to keep up that level of expectation, but it's probably not doing wholesale different things. You got there for a reason. I don't think you need to completely transpose what you're doing. But to build on sort of the last comments, you do want to make sure that any guest knows that you're responsive and that you're willing to take those things on as well. So I might not go in to the properties or have our property inspector go in and test, you know, every drawer and everything like that. But if we hear from a guest, hey, a couple of your cabinets are really shaky, I'm worried about those doors, we're going to schedule some maintenance to get those things done. We want to be responsive. So to let both the guests know that, hey, we're on it. We appreciate that you brought that to our attention. We'll take care of it. And should they ever come back, that they don't have that same experience. So I don't know that it's necessarily accelerating and doing things entirely different, but making sure that you're still living up to the promise of what your listing offers, and then making sure that you're taking care of those things that do stand out to guests and will probably stand out to future guests as well.
So Matthew,
my wife just made me.
Sorry.
My wife just made me redo some of the caulking in the bathroom because it was looking a little tired. And let's just say I did a terrible job. We need to have somebody else come in. Cammie, go ahead. I'm so sorry.
Oh no, it was
a bit of a sore spot for me.
Masking tape is the secret.
That's what I needed.
Okay, so there were some things that we started in the beginning. We actually had our house cleaners put a couple of cookies in the oven and have them on a plate before our guests came. Honestly, that got a little bit cumbersome, and we didn't get the response we were expecting from our guests. We were expecting them to be like, wow, I had cookies. So we stopped doing that. We stopped doing the gift baskets. But in the beginning, that's what we did to kind of set ourselves apart from our competition.
I like that. I like that a lot. I walked into a place once and they had a glass of port wine sitting and waiting for me. And I love a good port. Up here, it was actually in Porto, you know, where the good stuff comes from. But I was like, okay, wait a second. There's a glass here. How long is that sitting here? I know they don't want to put out the bottle. How's that? Okay. So it didn't necessarily hit as well as it did. Still drank it and it still hit as well as it did in that aspect. But how about you, Linda? Anything, you know, any added goodies, pleasantries that you've kind of adjusted the process, or, you know, hey, we're not going to reinvent the wheel and we're just continuing to deliver a good service?
I did add quite a few extra things. I think in the beginning, it was like just trying to get started and it was so much work. I didn't have, you know, Hospitable to help. I was doing everything manually. But as I started automating and having more time, I did a really good guest manual. So I also offered a lot of discounted products. So I'm near West Edmonton Mall. And at one point we could get discounted water park and amusement park passes. Now I actually split the discount with the guests, but they liked it because they got a discount and I actually made money on it. So that was great. The other thing I did is I started putting business cards in the suite saying, hey, if you book direct, you get 10% off your next stay. And they really like that because then it gets people coming back and forth multiple times. And you pretty much know they're going to leave a good review. And people can see on the profile that this guest keeps coming back and back and back. And we have a lot of business travelers coming in. So that I think helps with the Superhost status too, is having those repeat customers.
That's amazing. And I especially love making sure that, hey, we're a business, right? And brand that and utilize that. Even if it's, you know, your personal business and hey, this is Linda's Stays or something along the line. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't need to be, you know, business logo, brand name that's sharp, attractive. Like just make it something that you put yourself and you put your pride around, and then posting that in different areas, responding with that in the, you know, and building that brand. It's going to make people start to think of you more as, you know, some of those other famous brands that we're competing with. And Dave, you did mention supply, and then you talked about something where, you know, you have your property inspector go through, you know, you talked about the different people that you're working for. What are some of the people that you have on your team that are working to help you maintain these great guest experiences and, you know, are helping kind of maintain your properties overall?
Yeah, I think the business mechanics and the margins are such that, you know, we can't have a ton of full-time staff. So we rely really heavily on virtual assistants, right? So we found some great virtual assistants overseas. There's a bunch of college and community programs that also have business graduates and interns that are looking to get hours. And so for things that are routine, teachable, repeatable tasks, we will use staffers that we can train and spin up very quickly. So that might entail some levels of bookkeeping or other things. For things that are more professional services, we employ professional services. So when it comes to cleaning, when it comes to maintenance, when it comes to property inspection, we don't trade on those services. We go with professionals that do the task that's going to be required, because you're wasting more time if you're bringing in budget-minded folks or folks who say they can do something like, oh, I can change a lock for you, or I can repair a cabinet for you. no, we're going to bring in the tradespeople because we don't want to go through the cycles of having to do that work a second time. So I think that's the trade-off for our business. The people that we do use can be for repeatable, trainable things, and we'll use junior folks that can do that. Where we need professional services, we're employing professional services, and the costs are either ours to maintain the business, or it's in conjunction with the owner, and that's built into the cost that we manage with them.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Make sure we're doing it the right way, and it may cost a bit more, but we know we're going to have a great experience. And especially, this is an investment, right? It's not necessarily a cost, and it's an investment in our future, in our property, and making sure that we're delivering that wonderful experience. So how do we leverage this? How are we using that superhost status to get more business, to, earn more bookings, or, to kind of promote that? Cullin, are you doing anything specific? Are you coaching your clients on doing anything to really make that Superhost badge stand out in any way, shape, or form?
Not really. I think that what people often miss, though, is just striving towards Superhost and getting even close to it or falling right off of it. Airbnb will tell you it's the underpinnings of what gives you Superhost status that gives you the boost in the rankings. So, to anybody out there that's worried that they maybe fell off their Superhost badge for, a quarter, that may not be as painful. There's really the two parts to it. There's the boost that comes from the algorithm for attaining those goals. And then there's that badge, right, that says Superhost. And undoubtedly, there's people that look for that and filter for it. But maybe the advice is don't be overly concerned if you fell just below it. Maybe it's not going to be as big of a hit to your business as you assume it might be.
Yeah, I do see a lot of people get, we lost our badge, and they kind of have that fear. But hey, we take that as an opportunity to see if we can adjust the process. We earned it already. If we keep that process going, badge or not, we're still going to deliver a great guest experience. We're still going to get those 5-star reviews, and that's going to allow people, to come through. I know I don't necessarily look for a Superhost when I am, shopping around, but I definitely take a look at reviews, right? We look at the place, is it nice? And then I'm jumping right to that review section. Cami, are you doing anything to kind of leverage that Superhost status? How are you waiving that badge, or are you waiving that badge?
We mostly use the Superhost status with other owners that we're managing with, because it shows them basically our level of experience and our quality. I don't think a person that's going out, just like you said, you don't necessarily look for the Superhost badge, but being a Superhost does put you up in those top rankings so that you're the first property or one of the first properties that they see. If you're in a market that's saturated with a bunch of Superhosts, then you're going to have to work a little bit harder to be at the top. So, and the market is getting saturated. So you've got to really work and let your place stand out. It's getting harder and harder. We've had to step up our game. We leave snacks and drinks, and we've had to just really step it up just to compete with some of these other hosts that sometimes I wonder if it isn't a hobby. Like, they're just killing it. They're doing all these extra things, and I'm like, man, I don't know if I can keep up with these people. So, but you do have to, leveraging it that way, like as far as our resume with other owners, when we go to either coach or to manage, that shows them what our level of experience is.
That's amazing, using it in your own business marketing. And hey, these are the things that we're gonna strive for and bring. Linda, you mentioned direct bookings, right? And you, along with everybody else, mentioning direct booking. So are you using that on your direct booking site? Are you kind of promoting that? And do you kind of keep that mindset and you speak back to that when it comes to the direct booking site, that we're looking to leave a 5-star experience, kind of, even though, we're booking with you directly?
I do. So one thing I do in Hospitable is the day after the guest checks in, I do the same thing Cami does, where, hey, we're striving for a 5-star experience. Please let me know if there's any issues. So that's one thing I do. The other thing is, on my direct booking site, I'm waiting for Hospitable to have the full range of the direct booking, and I'll test that out on my Belize properties. But right now I'm using a software called OwnerRez, which actually does all my metrics. It does my GST reporting, tax reporting, everything. And it links with all the other softwares I use. And I do import all of my reviews, and I'm able to do that really easily with OwnerRez, as well as all the payments from all my platforms. So that makes it very efficient for tax reporting. But in there, it has all the reviews for each property. So when someone goes into my website for MBV Tiny Homes, which is in Belize, or my West Edmonton Rentals, they can see all those reviews that come from, from all the booking sources. And the interesting thing, not that I I shouldn't say this, is it allows you to delete a review if you don't like it. Now, you wouldn't want to do that for a 4-star, but if you had a really bad one, you could actually, put which ones you want in there. Now, I try not to do that too much, but if I have one that was totally unrealistic, I will take that and then leave the rest in there. And obviously I have Superhost, so it's not like I get that many bad reviews, but.
Yeah. And, that's one thing that I've seen a lot of hosts report back with success on is like just simply sending that first morning message and checking in, letting them know that you're there. Like you're going to see a lot of people who are going to reply back to that and let you know if something happened along the way. So making sure that we're checking in during their stay, in order to go ahead and kind of nip some of those things in the bud or get ahead of it, as we, mentioned earlier. And then, the other aspect of that too, like making sure that you're keeping on top of those reviews, using those reviews in your direct booking site. We do have a way to, export and pull out some of those reviews so that you can highlight them when you're adding them to your direct booking. Because, hey, I know you earned those on one channel, but your property earned those, across the board.
Right. One other thing I forgot to mention that we talked about, Matthew, is if you have a guest where they're going to leave a bad review, what you do about that. Because I've had situations where someone had a massive party and I had to call the police and get them out. Now, they're going to you figure they're probably not going to leave a good review because you evicted them from the property. So Hospitable has the ability to go in and say it's a bad review, and it won't post that till the very end of the review period, right at the last second. And that way, typically, I don't ever get a bad review because those people, I don't want them to see that I left a review. So it's at the last second. And then that kind of makes things work a little better as well.
That is really nice.
Yeah, I do have a question about that in the review process, right? I've seen it every way, shape, or form. Do you review everybody? Do you, if you're going to get a bad review, even give them a 5-star because you don't want to open that can of worms? Cullin, why don't you get us started? Like, do you review every one of your guests? Are you selective? Are you giving everybody 5 stars? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, I have it's one of my favorite features of Hospitable. Is one of the things that really drove me to the software was like, as I started to scale, I got tired of writing the same reviews every day. So
Copy and paste.
I let Hospitable write the review, but I have a 1-day delay on it. And I'm trained my housekeepers to let me know if they found something that the property was disrespected. Maybe it's a little dirty, sometimes they're more clean, sometimes more dirty, but was it something that I really need to inform other hosts about, a level of disrespect? And in that case, I will then go in and delete my pre-programmed positive review and say something just like, I wouldn't recommend this guest to other hosts. And then put the 14-day pause on it and then let that go out that way.
Interesting. How about you, Cami? What's your review process like? You giving it to everybody? Are you holding back?
If I know that I'm going to be getting or maybe have a question how the review is going to be, I'll delay it to the last second. So I stop all the messages asking them for a review. And I'm just really careful with that. And then the minute I see they've reviewed me, depending on if I think it's going to be a horrible review, I'll let that thing sit there 14 days and I'll actually do the review at the very last second, because then I'll have a time for other reviews, positive reviews, to stack up underneath them. Yeah. So I play a little game with that. It's a little labor intensive, but and then I'm also pretty good at getting the reviews removed because many guests will make critical mistakes. Yeah. So I've had a few I can't, but it's kind of a fight, but it's worth the fight. I've only had 2 reviews I can't get off, which is frustrating because I actually evicted them out of the house. They threw a party, and unfortunately Airbnb didn't see it as a party, even though they canceled the reservation on Airbnb's behalf. So very frustrating. So, but it is what it is, and it doesn't seem to be hurting my business.
Yeah, some of the challenges that we go through there, right? I did appreciate the fact that, speaking to some hosts where they're like, I want to share that negative review because I want other hosts to see this. I want other hosts to know and kind of share with the greater host community, which is interesting because, hey, even though it may affect us or we may get, some sort of retribution or, a negative reply, we still want to make sure that other hosts don't go through that in any way, shape, or form. Linda, your reviews. You reviewing everybody? We giving them truthful reviews?
I do review everybody, and I do have a delay set up. So if the cleaners do notify me of any problems, I will go in and edit it. So I've set up more than one review, so they don't look all the same, because you can do that in Hospitable where it'll rotate between them. And I only go in to edit those if there's something that's really amazing or really bad, or if it's something where I want to delay it at the end.
And, that's something as well, the ability to kind of give yourself a gap within that. And that's what we talked about before we jumped on the call. Hey, I need to go in and similar to Cullin, or, I want to see, did they disrespect our property? But sometimes 2 days, a day, the automated review doesn't really help me. So in those scenarios, give it 7 days, give it 10 days, right? Utilize that space so that you have plenty of time to go in and cancel that review if need be. And then using some of the other messaging tools that we have. So you post a review day 7, send them an automated follow-up on day 10 if they haven't left you a review, to try to go ahead and solicit that. Dave, on your team, how do you guys handle reviews, right? Because you got a couple moving parts there. Is whose responsibility is it to go through and edit the software? And, are you having your cleaners check back with them to let them know how they left the place?
Sort of a combination, I think, of everything Cami, Cullin, and Linda already said. So we definitely employ a message post-stay that's couched more as, what are the things we can do better as hosts that could have made your stay more enjoyable? And, assuming there are none, we would appreciate a 5-star review. It's great for us as a small business to grow our reputation and sort of put them in the position of, we're trying to grow this as a business. And so your impact is real there. And so we'd appreciate it. Of course, if we don't hear back on that response, and we will do a follow-up post that response, we tend to think, ooh, this might move towards a negative situation. If we still didn't really have anything to complain about, the cleaner said the place was left in good repair, we'll typically just refrain from a review in that scenario, because we're kind of in this indifferent space. If there's something truly negative about what took place, I tend to think there's probably other things that we need to do. We might be reaching out to them for additional cleaning costs or damage or whatever those other things are. So we'll typically suspend the review in that case as well. But we are asking, first and foremost, after the stay, we are asking again if we didn't see a review. If they do review, we're reviewing on an automated basis as well. And then we are checking in with our suppliers too to make sure everything was as expected after that, or if there's any follow-up that comes.
Amazing. Yeah.
Can I just add one thing that I forgot about?
Absolutely.
So on our new properties, sometimes it's kind of hard to get those reviews started. And so if I notice I've had 2 or 3 guests stay and I don't have a review yet, I will actually pick the phone up and call them and just check in and be like, hey, this is a new property. We really appreciate your feedback. And we were just wondering if there was anything we could have done better. And then usually it's like, oh yeah, we forgot. And I was like, well, and then they will leave us a 5-star review, which really helps us with these new properties.
So there's one thing that early on somebody told me about this, and I've made other suggestions, and I'm wondering if anybody, when you get a new property up and running, somebody told me, hey, have your wife book a stay. Have your friend, your cousin book a stay, and then they're going to be your first 5-star review. Let them go through the process. Maybe they don't physically stay there, but at least have the messaging go through, right? See what the process looks like to get some experience. I know that's a bit of a deceptive practice there in a little bit, but it kind of makes sense because we know getting that first 5-star review, okay, I can trust this place. Linda.
I actually did that in Belize, and it was very critical because Belize is a different market. The builders aren't as good. I didn't know what problems would be. I was living in one house initially. I have 2 tiny homes. The other one, I hadn't had anyone staying in, and I was about to have a guest. So I have one of my friends that lives in Belize, who's a friend. And I said, can you please book it? Because I want to see, first of all, it's US dollars. I don't know how that's all going to work. Do the booking. He did stay in the property because that makes a big difference. Is the mattress comfortable enough? Do I need a mattress pad? Are we missing a utensil for cooking? All these things you do not find until someone stays in your property. And I didn't want that to be a real guest. So I didn't do it to get the review, although he did do a review, an honest one on the positives and negatives, which were things I already disclosed in the listing, like, hey, there's construction in the area, it's a brand new development and things like that. So he put it in. So he did a truly honest review, which I wanted him to do, but
That's
it
great.
Still helped identify any issues.
And I love that too, because then that's going to speak to, hey, even though there was construction, like they said, like I'm still giving you a 5-star review because that didn't completely. So if anybody here in Portugal needs somebody to test out there, I will gladly be your Airbnb tester. I'll go stay a night, and I promise I will be as transparent and as truthful as possible. Just let me know, Matthew@hospitable.com. Okay, so we have the last 15 minutes or so. We're going to open it up to a few questions from our audience. This has been great. I've had so much fun just chatting with you guys and listening to all the wonderful things that you have to say. But the first question that we had, and this came through earlier in the registration, was suggestions with dealing with pets. And I get a lot of hosts ask me about pets and what people do with pets. Does everybody accept pets? What does that look like? So Catherine, thank you so much, Catherine. Suggestions on dealing with pets. Does hosting pets have an impact on your status? Anybody have any experience with that?
I do accept pets in one of my properties. And the reason I decided to do it, first of all, is because I had a lot of people asking if I would. And in some of the properties, I don't want to because there are people that have allergies that won't book your place. So that's something to consider. But I have one property that has a basement suite and an upstairs suite, and the tenants upstairs had a dog. So obviously nobody's going to stay downstairs unless they're okay with dogs. So I did put the basement suite available for pets, and I got tons of bookings because of that. And I just actually had someone on Home Exchange say, hey, can I stay in one of your properties? And they had 2 dogs. So they're like, hey, can we pick this one? So it hasn't been a huge thing. And I do charge them an extra fee. So that helps with the business. And I do find pet owners, they're usually driving to the destination. They could be repeat guests. That helps a lot with revenue. I'm an accountant, so I care about that kind of stuff. And I haven't really had any problems affecting reviews. The one thing I have to do extra is make sure the cleaner checks that they've cleaned the dog run in the backyard. Interesting.
And yeah, Cullin, did you have something you want to add?
So yeah, across my properties, they're mainly cabin type properties. So we accept pets in about half of them. And what the criteria for us really is the flooring. So, do we have a vinyl flooring or a ceramic type flooring product, i.e. not carpet? So where we have carpet, we tend not to accept pets because if there's one sort of small pet mistake, then that becomes compounded. So for us, it's really driven by, do we have the flooring that will accommodate allowing pets? And then, we charge, we able to get a premium price on the pet friendly cabins.
Did you adjust the rest of your furniture for any of those properties knowing that you were going to allow pets in there? Have you made any changes, or, have you suggested any changes to those or to those owners in any way?
Really it's really flooring.
Okay.
There's some small things, maybe if you're looking at a couch or a particular type of
Yeah.
floor rug, you might not take that rug versus another. But at a real macro level, no. Really for us, about accepting pets really has to do with, do you have flooring that will accommodate it?
Yeah, we just picked up all the rugs because we got a puppy and he's having a ton of fun running through our house. So all the rugs are stored away for the next few weeks here.
Matthew, I got a little bit to add to the pet thing. We just started
Absolutely.
doing a pet friendly place. And one thing that kind of bit us in the backside, we didn't realize, is that we needed to put a rule in our listing saying we do not accept puppies. And this is the age of a puppy. And we also make sure that there's a limit on pets. We do not ever allow cats. Cats can destroy your place just with one mistake. They spray somewhere. It's very difficult to get that smell out. And we have a limit of 2 dogs, and we put a certain amount of poundage. So no dogs over 40 pounds. So it's kind of, and we actually charge $40 a day per pet.
And I would certainly echo Cami on the listing. Like, it doesn't matter if you've said no pets. It doesn't matter if you've said it twice. You want to be as upfront and as clear as many times as possible in the listing, because for all the listings where we say no pets, half the inquiries end up being pets, which is remarkable. So you want to be, put the little asterisks next to the note, no pets, in multiple places, because it invariably comes up even if you are not accepting.
And I love the way you defined it so well, right? This is the age, these are the poundage, right? Those different pieces that we're looking to make sure that we're, keeping to, and hey, these are the rules that we're setting. It sounds to me, Dave, you need to turn on the before answers response, before reservation response, so that when they send that inquiry, we let them know, hey, unfortunately, pets are not allowed in this space, and save yourself a couple clicks there. So Kapal had a great question for us. Thank you so much, Kapal. I was a super host. In my mind, I still am. I'm sure you still are. But a couple of ridiculous reviews by people, who were terrible to the house, absolutely ruined it. Airbnb didn't support you on the matter. Unfortunately, that's not a surprise. What do you do about those situations? Does anybody have any experiences they can speak to on what that looks like? And I know, Cullin, you spoke on that a bit before as well, is the status is one thing, but making sure that you're delivering the experience is something that, is a bit different. Anybody lose their status or had some issues where they could possibly lose their status, and what's your mindset around that?
Well, I'm about ready to lose my status, and it was not my fault. So I'm still in the process of fighting it, because over the weekend, a child got out of a car walked through our 1 acre yard, okay, stepped in a pile of fire ants, and apparently Airbnb canceled on my behalf, which means I will lose my status, I believe, for a year. So I don't know, I'm still fighting it. I don't see how that's my fault. But if I lose it, I don't think it's the end of the world. I've seen many, many hosts who have had it taken away, and they say they still have very good revenue. So it's not the end of the world. I think it's mostly in the mind of a host, but we will find out.
I'm sure you'll still be quite successful there. So going into the audience, there was one here that I wanted to speak to and kind of see how you handled. Carrie, thank you so much, Carrie. How do you deal with off-hours communication with your guests, nights, weekends, without being tied to your phone? Things that need, more than just a canned response or an automated reply. How is your system set up to be able to go ahead and manage those situations again, so you're not glued to your phone there?
Yeah, we've got automation set up such that we're always acknowledging something coming in, even if we're not responding to it immediately. So there's always a flare of, thanks for your inquiry. We need to take that back. We'll be back to you in a few hours, and whatever our SLA sort of period of time is to respond. So we've got automation such that we're acknowledging and maybe not responding right away, but at least there's something in the queue for someone else. Obviously, if it's a very specific ask, we've got a different response based on what it is. If it's a pre-booking inquiry or a question, as you said before, with a very clearly defined, is this close to the beach type of scenario, then we can set up a canned response that can go out on an automated fashion. The other thing that we're doing now is we are training VAs to act on our behalf on off hours and early mornings, late nights, as well as during sleeping hours. So they're able to respond using a whole host of canned responses that we've already programmed in. And if it's something they don't understand, again, it's admitting that we've heard your request. We need to get back to you on it. We'll be back in touch within 6 to 8 hours.
And I think that's so key too, having those, the VAs and making sure that they have those canned responses, right? Here are the situations, here are those things. We've lived through it, we know what to expect. So here's the way that we want to communicate, and making sure that you're delivering that experience throughout. Linda, what do you have to add for us?
Well, I had a huge issue with this being in Belize, where I can't even necessarily answer the phone sometimes. So I actually put in all my automation emails to the guests before check-in that, make sure you print the directions, ask any questions in advance, because I might not be available immediately, and I will not be available after insert time, 9 p.m., 10 p.m. There is no support after a certain time. So I'm very clear on that, but then I do give them emergency numbers in case of a plumbing issue, anything like that. There are people they can call that have after hours service. So it's like, make sure you have the door code. If you're checking in late, I don't allow check-in after a certain hour because of that. Because I had someone trying to call me at midnight at one time, and I was like, no. So that's why I started putting it in where, you can't call after this time, I'm not available. There's hotels like that in certain countries. So why can't we do that with our properties, as long as you set the expectation? If it doesn't work for them, then they'll book somewhere else, which I would rather them book somewhere else than be unhappy about my property or one of my properties.
Absolutely. And I think there's so much with setting that expectation, right? And trying to be as clear. Obviously, we're still going to have people who, even though we say no pets 6 times, they're still going to ask the question for no pets. But we are, I think, covering for, the vast majority there when we're setting those expectations, letting them know what to expect. So it just makes it a bit easier on, everybody overall. So Rodrigo, hey, Rodrigo, thanks for your question. So we just earned our Superhost status, and this is our first managed property. They're not owners. How do you attract more owners to increase the number of managed properties? They're so happy of their Superhost achievement, and how do they, leverage that? Dave, what are you doing out there? You're in Toronto, right? So I'm sure it's probably pretty popular, but how are you actively, trying to attract additional owners to utilize your service?
Yeah, I wouldn't say Superhost is something that is particular at the forefront of anything that we're soliciting. We're not, suggesting that we're going to leverage Superhost status that's either been connoted on us or some other owner to, put it on their listing. I have seen owners that have done that, where every listing, for instance, is built under my name, and as I achieve that Superhost status, now I can become the listing host on all the new hosted properties as well. We don't operate our business that way, but that is one way that you can leverage that Superhost status, obviously, as more properties come online. Mostly if we're dealing with investors that have a property, they tend to acquire more properties, especially in this market. So we work with some owners that have 7, that have 15 properties. And so in their first foray with you, it's them taking a little bit of a chance. You're saying you can do this, let's see what you can do. Once they've earned that superhost status, they're seeing the positive reviews come in. It's a clue to them. I feel confident that these guys can help me manage additional properties. And so I'd say that's how we're levering it, is we're proving to our owners that we do a great job. They're going to be seen really well. We like to say with all of them, give us a chance. We're going to start your property with 4 seasons experience at Holiday Inn pricing. We're going to get the people in the door, build that experience. And over time, you're going to have a 4 seasons experience for 4 seasons pricing, given if the property is, of that standard. And what we're hoping to do is let them know that it takes a little bit of time to get into the swing of it. Over time, you'll make more money. As you have more properties online, bring them to us, and they're a source of referrals. So if they have a great experience, they're going to tell their other realtor friends, their investment partners about our service. And so we'll lever it that way. So providing a great experience extends the network either through them or through people that they know as well.
That's amazing. And I remember like early on, again, when I first got into, working here at Hospitable or Smart B&B at the time, talking to people who were like, so I told my neighbors that I was running an Airbnb, and then they were like, oh, I actually have another property. Could you help me? Or they started telling their friends. Hearing people who talk to their friends and tell them that they run Airbnbs and like, oh, I never knew that you ran an Airbnb. Well, that's interesting because I have somebody coming to town looking for a stay, or I got an extra property. Do you think you can help me? I started posting some things recently. I just had a friend reach out to me who I've known for quite some time, and they're like, hey, I'm managing a couple properties here back home. And it was like, oh, wow, go ahead and speak. And people are going to, same thing when it comes to attracting those guests, right? And letting people know, hey, I'm a host. We talked about the network effect. Not only attracting guests by letting them, people within your network know what you do, but also making sure that you're tapping into your guest network, right? And asking, hey, if you know anybody who's going to be in the area, if you know anybody that's coming back to the area, right? I had a host who always pays attention to people who are letting them know they're coming into town for a family stay. So you're coming into town for a family stay, you have other members of your family nearby, they're going to have a network there. So making sure they deliver a great experience, and they make sure that their direct booking, business card with their QR code is in the apartment, or they're sharing their branding and their messaging so that next time somebody comes around, even giving them, hey, book with me direct, I'll give you a 5% discount. Sure, you're giving that discount, but at the end of the day, you've earned that guest, you've won them over, they're going to stick with you. And that's something that you can benefit from in the long run. Before we go, there was one more question I wanted to get to here. Cullin, I'm going to ask you, do you require government ID? Do you have your hosts, your guests go through any sort of rental agreements? I lost the question because it just popped up. Here it is. Do speakers, thank you so much, Monique, collect security deposits, ask for government ID, or sign a rental agreement? Monique found that does help with some newbie guests to relieve some of those stresses. Cullin, what's your process? What's your vetting process like when it comes to your guests?
Absolutely. I'm one of those hosts that believes that instant booking is an absolute must for success. But, there's a few levels that we can, levers that we can throw there. And the first is requiring a government ID. And that one I do require. If something goes really wrong, I want Airbnb to know, how to find this guest. I don't require that they have previous reviews. Probably about half my guests are first-time Airbnb users. And I do require a security deposit so that on the off chance, I have like 1,600 host reviews, and I had one incident where I went to Airbnb for some damage for about $300, but I didn't have my security deposit set up yet. So that was my learning moment. I do set up security deposit generally in the kind of one night stay range, and leave it at that.
Interesting. How about you, Cammie? What's your vetting process like, or your vetting process for your different property owners?
Just a little FYI, they're taking the security deposit away. I just read that recently, Airbnb is. And they don't really take it anyways. So what I've learned is I do not do a security deposit anymore because of air cover, because it really doesn't, the security deposit is a little bit of a deterrent for some people because they may think they're actually going to have to pay that. So we've taken it off. As far as vetting goes, if they have a score of under 4-star, We ask more questions. We ask them why they have that kind of a review. And if their answer is decent, then we'll let them book. We've never been bit by that. We have been bit by people who don't have any reviews, and think red flags to look out for are one-night stays. One-night stays are can be very dangerous unless you're in a business community where people are just traveling through, like next to an airport or something like that. The bigger houses, we tend to be much more careful on our vetting, ask more questions. If people get testy when you ask questions or they do not respond at all, that's when we start getting worried. We don't do any sort of agreement ahead of time. It's just way too cumbersome with the amount of listings that we manage. So,
Yeah.
but there are definitely things that you can, if you're asking questions, they're ignoring you, or they are giving you bogus answers. It's like red flag.
I've talked to hosts who are like, I asked so many questions that people have canceled for a one night stay, and we know there's a good chance they were probably going to try to throw a party or do something along those lines, but they realized I'm so involved with the property that, okay, I'm going to try to find somebody else who's not going to send me a single message until, I've checked out and gone beyond that.
We also, we let them know we live next door, even though we don't. So we tell them that we're just down the street, and we're perfectly available at all hours if you'd like us to stop in or check in on or something. So the partiers, they kind of stay away. And then
Sneaky.
all bold, we had to do this because Airbnb shut us down for like 2 weeks, which was very frustrating. For all you hosts out there, make sure you look at the new rules for the cameras and how they are disclosed. They want to know where the cameras are, what the brand is, when they are recording, I had to put it in bold in my listing description, and that's cut back on a lot of people that want to do bad things to my house, because and it's also, Airbnb just made me so nervous because they could have shut all my listings down for 10 days, and that would have cost me close to $20,000. It would have been very expensive. So
Wow.
Yeah, that was not a great experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Making sure you disclose, hey, we have noise aware. I'm going to shout out to the noise aware
Yeah,
team. We have noise aware there, so we're monitoring those sounds. So, make sure that we have a nice, pleasant stay. Fantastic. Well, we're over time. I could talk to you all day and night. I think this was absolutely phenomenal. On behalf of the whole Hospitable team, we want to thank the entire audience for, spending this time with us, and hopefully you learned something. Hopefully we're going to all be better hosts, coming out of this. To the panel, our first ever panel. You guys were amazing. You guys were phenomenal. This was awesome. Thank you so much. You shared some wonderful insights. I know that I have some information that I'm going to share with hosts after this call on some of the things that we're doing here. But we greatly appreciate it. So if you enjoyed this workshop, we're going to have plenty more in the future. The next actual masterclass that we're doing is on mistakes to avoid when screening a short-term tenant with Ella from Autohost. Autohost is a fantastic product that helps guest screening. So we're going to be holding a masterclass. Pierre will be here with Ella to tell you about that. And then our next Hospitable Host Educator panel by Hospitable Hosts, of course, are going to be the pros and cons on listing on multiple channels. Right. So multiple channels. I got people that want to be on every channel imaginable. Put me on all 800, Matthew. And I talked to hosts that are like, no, my 90 properties are on Airbnb and that's it. I don't need any more hassles. So those will be great. That one's in May, and the Autohost is over towards the end of April. Oh, right next to my mom's birthday. So thank you all so very much once again. Again, on behalf of the entire Hospitable team, this was an absolute pleasure, and happy hosting to you all. Thank you so much. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks so much, everyone.